Ubyssey's annual presidential debate. We're going to start now. It'd be good if you could respect the candidates up front here. My name is Jeff Lister. I'm the coordinating editor of the Ubyssey. We hold an annual debate every year because we like to ask a few more questions of the people who will be leading the AMS next year. So the format will be as follows. The candidates will be asked a question. They will each be allowed a 1-minute response, followed by a 1-minute rebuttal, at which point we will open the floor for a 2-minute open discussion where candidates can ask each other questions and address the issues. Oh, sorry, a 30-second rebuttal. We got that right? Good, guys? Okay. Will will be our faithful timekeeper, and we'll try and keep this thing on track because we have lots of questions. So without further ado, we are going to start off with a softball. And go, candidates, what is the most fun you've had on campus after 2 in the morning? 1 minute, Harsev.
I guess for me, the most fun I've had is going skinny dipping with a bunch of my Sigma Chi brothers and some other girls from other sororities during the summer.
Do you want to elaborate?
Well, skinny dipping is usually, to define skinny dipping for everyone, it's where you take off all your clothes and you're bare naked and you jump over the fence, get into the pool, and you come out, and yeah, that's basically it.
Good times. Great. We'll hand that mic over to Tanner there.
All right, so I guess no secrets here. Best moment I've had after 2 a.m. in the morning was actually on election night last year. I ended up in the fountain on Main Mall, fully dressed in a suit, and all I remember is singing in the rain through campus with a couple of my now colleagues.
Fun. Sounds like a good time. Do we want to have a rebuttal on this, candidates? No. Great. Now that campus knows some of your more embarrassing secrets, we're going to have 1 minute for opening remarks. We'll start with Bokor over here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tanner Bokor. I'm your current AMS Vice President of External Affairs. I'm also the Financial Officer for the Alliance of BC Students, which is BC's largest post-secondary lobbying organization. I'm running because I have the experience as a current AMS exec. I've been involved with the AMS for 2 years, and I have the direction that I can provide for the society moving forward through its largest transition period. I want to work on a transition plan for the new sub, create a student assembly to bring campus groups together, make our finances as transparent and open as possible for students to choose where their student fees are spent, and also to advocate for affordable housing on campus and for a successful transit referendum later this fall.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Harsev Oshan, and I was the president of the Arts Undergraduate Society last year, and I was also the chair of the Student Life and Communications Committee for the AMS. I'm currently the president of the Interfraternity Council and the Shinorama coordinator for Ubyssey. I'm running because I believe next year offers us a really good opportunity to make it a very transformative one. And the reason I say this is because we have the opening of the new sub and we have the 100-year AMS anniversary celebration. And for us to make it very transformative, we need to start reconnecting with students. We need to start revolutionizing the way we interact with students. And I have the experience and know-how on how to actually organize events and bring students together and connect with our student body. And that's why I'm the best candidate. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. Take one moment for technical. Make sure we hold our mics nice and close so that everyone in the back can hear you. So the first serious question is, do you support the Brewery initiative? And regardless, if it is passed, what would you do to make sure that it meets students' goals like price? 1 minute.
I support the Brewery referendum question. From the moment I heard of it, I was really excited about it. I personally have been organizing a lot of events since first year, and I know that getting kegs from off campus is usually very expensive. Having something on campus is not just going to give us cheaper kegs, but it's also going to add educational value to our campus as well. And having a brewery on campus is just going to be one of those things that UBC students will be proud of. And I 100% support this initiative.
If you don't want more, you don't have to take it. You can pass it.
Sorry. I think getting the referendum question passed this year is the right time to actually get it passed because we need to make sure that it gets aligned with the plans for having it on the farm center, which has been scheduled for 2017. So this is the perfect time to get it passed, and I hope each and every one of you over here would pass the question.
Excellent. Just one sec. Let Will reset here. Okay, go for it.
Sweet. So I'm also in support of the brewery. I supported it in March when the question first came up, and I supported it again throughout the process of trying to figure out how exactly we're going to make this to fruition. I was really happy to see the question come through on a referendum. I think it provides AMS Council the ability to have some flexibility, guaranteed funding that we're only going to levy as soon as all the details are finalized, which we're hoping will happen in 2017, but there's a lot of work that has to go into this brewery. We need to get a actual license to actually manufacture the beer. We need to start working on actually getting the farm center approved. There's a lot of permitting and licensing issues that we need to work through, and we also need to have an actual business plan for how this can work. I'm supporting it because I think it has a great educational impact, and I think it improves the social life on campus so much, and it's really one of those unique things that UBC can have, and actually may allow us to work better with the rest of the Metro Vancouver community through selling some of our beer to other student unions, which could be a really cool opportunity. And I also think it'd be good for us to be able to have an opportunity to let students choose for block party what type of beer they want to have that year.
Awesome. We'll go to a 30-second rebuttal from Harsev.
So since this idea came to my attention, I've been supporting this whole campaign. I've been working with Aaron Bailey, trying to get things on track and helping him get a lot of signatures. I just wanted to know, I just saw a picture on Facebook uploaded by Jeremy McElroy, and it showed that you actually abstained from the question on council. You say that you support it fully, so I want to know, do you actually support it, or you just, you know,
Yeah, so when I spoke in AMS Council about the question, I was definitely supportive. I made that very clear. The reason why I abstained on the question is because I wanted it to be initiated by students. I think if this is a project that's going to be successful, we need a very large student backing, and I thought getting the 1,000 signatures through a petition is the best way to get students interested. It raises buzz, and it will actually help us lead to a successful referendum.
Yeah, so we're going to go to a 2-minute open floor. You can feel free to ask questions, make additional statements, and discuss the issue.
So I love beer. A lot of students love beer. In my opinion, beer brings a lot of students together. As you can see, gallery on Tuesday is usually packed. I think this referendum question should receive a lot of support, and I know a lot of students will support it. I just hope that everyone fully understands the obligations that come with it when you're voting. Fully supported, understand how long the process is going to take, and yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of technical things that we need to work on. The first is actually getting a business case. In 2011, when we started looking at the concept of a brew pub, we got a company called First Light to come in and take a look at what a brew pub would look like in the new sub. Now, we realized that that wouldn't be sustainable, so then we started looking at the farm center. But there's a whole new business plan we need to create next year to make sure we're going to make this business viable and not end up like the Whistler Lodge. And the permitting process is going to take time. You know, with all the liquor policy reviews that the province has done this year, we're not sure what the impact is going to be on UBC, and it's going to be pretty challenging. But as president, I want to make sure we get through all those loopholes and we get this thing built on time and to students' expectations.
Great. So we're going to move on to question number 3 for the night, and we're going to the Whistler Lodge, as Tanner just mentioned. Should the AMS sell its Whistler Lodge, and if so, how should it sell it? In terms of, should it be packaged off, or should it be demolished, or should it be sold as a whole lot as it is now? And if not, what is your solution for making the lodge profitable?
So I'm torn with this question. I'm not yet fully decided on whether or not I want to sell it. I personally believe that AMS is a service-driven society, and even though the Whistler Lodge is seen as a business, I still think it's a business. Yes, it offers employment. It still offers a service to students. Fact of the matter is, Whistler Lodge is losing some money, and something needs to be done about it. And that is why I'm willing to support the question. The only reason I'm willing to support the question is because I think the money from the endowment fund, the interest that'll come from the endowment fund, could be used into subsidizing costs for students who would want to go to Whistler and enjoy the same service. So it would still be a service that's being offered by the AMS, but it's looking at an alternative solution for it.
Yeah, so first off, I'm supporting the question because I want to give AMS Council the flexibility to say, you know what, if the Whistler Lodge is not a viable business, then we can sell the property and move forward. I think we haven't looked at all the options yet. We're still talking about leasing. We're still talking about third-party operation, and those are conversations that are going to still take some months. But council needs to be able to say, if this business isn't working, we need to do best for students and sell the lodge. And I agree with Harsev. I think when we actually do subdivide the land, should we get to that point and sell the lodge, whatever profits come from that should be put in the AMS endowment, which have a stable return and go towards student services on campus. But we should also have a percentage held back to support those students who do want to go up to Whistler and learn how to ski.
Great. We're going to go to a 30-second rebuttal from Tanner. No rebuttal? Would you like a rebuttal at this time? You're good. Okay. Do we want to talk about this for a couple of minutes here? You guys good? Or are you satisfied on the issue? Okay, there we go.
So one of my concerns with the Whistler Lodge is that we would lose out on giving this, we would lose out on this service, and that's why I say that the interest that comes out from the endowment, should we decide to sell it, should be used for services. At the same time, though, I did have a conversation with the chair of Bagby, and he told me that they haven't had enough time into leasing options. And in my opinion, leasing options would be a very, very good option for the Whistler Lodge. Hypothetically speaking, if we lease it out for, say, 50 years, and we'll be getting our money. We won't be losing any money from the lodge. 50 years from now, we will still own the property, and property value in Whistler would just skyrocket. And so we would still be able to call it our lodge, and we'd still be able to offer that service. At the same time, at the same time, we can offer that service for students to actually go there, because in the leasing agreement, you could work something out for students, a student rate for students to actually go and enjoy the services of the lodge.
So, I mean, first off, the Whistler Lodge has a lot of history to it. This is going to be the last time that students will ever be able to own property in Whistler, what the real estate prices are. But I think it's important to realize what this question is actually doing. It's not saying that we're going to go ahead and sell the lodge right now. We can't even do that until AMS Council says, yep, we're confident with these plans, we're ready to go ahead. And again, we haven't actually taken the time to really evaluate leasing. We're still looking at third-party operation. That's all things that our Business and Governance Board is going to be looking at. And we're not at the stage where we're ready to make a decision, but we need that flexibility and we need this question to pass to preserve the rest of the society.
Thanks, guys. We're going to move on to question 4, and it's a bit of a doozy. What was your biggest mistake in your last political office? We'll start with you, Harsev. Sorry, pass the mic.
Where should I begin? So I've mentioned a couple of times my biggest learning curve at Ubyssey was during my presidency as president of the Arts Undergraduate Society. And the reason I say this is because I went from being straight from being a coordinator, a social coordinator, to being a president. And I went in with the mentality of being a coordinator. And in the beginning, I was micromanaging a lot of the portfolios, overstepping my boundaries with my vice presidents and telling them what to do, and I would get mad if it wasn't happening. But I realized and I noticed how the team dynamics were not working, and everyone wasn't happy with me. And so I went to student development office, and I sought advice, and I used their way. I just tried it out, and it actually worked out really well. For the second term, I empowered my team, and with that same system, I was able to actually encourage and empower my team to actually go ahead and get the referendum passed for the Art Student Center.
Okay, great. I'll pass it on.
So for me, my biggest mistake in office, so back in April, I thought it was a good idea to hold some debates for the point grade candidates to provide an opportunity for students to learn about all the different platforms that were out there. So we planned one, which was in the art gallery, and unfortunately there was a very big snafu involving the BC Liberal Party. I had sent out an email way in advance and worked with their on-campus clubs to try to encourage the Liberals to come out. We had all the other parties. But there was a bit of an issue about an email that we sent saying that we permitted a designate. And it took me a lot of time to kind of think about this issue. I think the first mistake is that I apologized too early for saying it was an IT problem. Turns out the email did in fact get through and was just forwarded into oblivion. But I also think that we should have honored what we had in that email, and that's a mistake that I recognized. I apologized outright to the Minister of Citizen Services now a couple days afterwards, and we've actually had a pretty good working relationship there on in. But
yeah, do you want to rebuttal on that? No, you're gonna just okay. So the president doesn't have a specific portfolio. Why does this society even need a president? 1 minute.
Yeah, so the role of the president is about 80% everyone else's portfolio and 20% your own pet projects. In terms of why you need a president, you need someone to set the direction for the society. You need someone who's that constant stability, that support network for the vice presidents, being able to bridge the divides between the different departments, making sure everyone knows what's going on with each other, and being able to be that communicator. But it's also important to have a public face of the society. You need someone who can talk on the issues, who can represent students, who knows the issues, and I think it's really important to have someone at that helm.
Cool.
So in my opinion, through my experience as AUS president, I think the role of the president is mainly to manage relationships on council, to make sure that council is very cohesive, and to make sure that everyone works together towards one vision, one direction. We've seen over the past how a team that cannot work well can affect council quite a bit, and so it's very important for a president to have the ability to manage conflicts within council and to make sure that everyone is working together. Yes, people have different opinions. People will have different ideas on issues. At the same time, we need to foster a sense of respect for each other, so that hatreds or spite towards one another doesn't get in between working within the working environment of the society.
Cool. Yep. We have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Yeah. So one of the things about being the president is also working with the executive team. We're not elected on a slate, we're elected individually, so sometimes you're going to get people in there who don't agree. The most important thing is to say clearly, if you don't agree, setting the boundaries for respectful debate. But I also think that the support we provide to council is extremely important. We need to actually provide them with the tools and the training and an orientation program that they can actually say, yep, this is exactly what's going on with the AMS. I know what to do. I know how to deal with issues as they come up. And right now that hasn't happened.
Just to add on that, I just wanted to say that when an executive committee is working together, it's very easy to inspire the whole of council. In my experience, when my executive committee wasn't getting along with me, it was very difficult to inspire the AUS council. And when they started working towards the same vision that I had, and instead of telling them what to do, I was empowering them, it worked way better. So what needs to happen is execs shouldn't be fighting against each other. Execs should be addressing the issue. It should be execs against the issue and not execs versus each other.
This will be an open discussion.
Yeah, so I mean, for the executive, we are the faces of the society. We are responsible for executing most of the responsibilities that council gives us. But it's also about the one-on-one conversations that you have with councillors. Ultimately, we have a board of directors of about 60 people who are responsible for the operations, and they're elected from all the different faculties on campus. We need to be able to provide them the tools through a comprehensive orientation program and through retreats. Like we used to have a Whistler Lodge retreat that was very beneficial. You go through a crash course on Robert's Rules, you go through the society issues. That type of thing is very important to have. But in terms of the executive relationship, I think we also have to understand that it's not just the direction of the president, it's also the fact that the president needs to be an active listener and rely on their vice presidents so that should they get advice from them saying, I think you're taking the wrong direction on this issue, you're going to take that feedback and you're going to develop a strategy. It's about a collaborative approach, not a top-down, we're just going to run the ship in one direction. That's unsustainable. I've seen structures like that in past years and it doesn't work. It needs to be where everyone has buy-in. And that's what we need to create, not just on the executive, but on council as well.
So being on council, you look up to council. You look up to the exec team. If you see the exec team is not united, they're not cohesive, it usually doesn't inspire you to actually be there or actually have a buy-in into issues. what execcom needs to be there to inspire counselors to actually be there by themselves. Over the past year, we've seen a record high number of execs resigning, and I think that was just like a sign of how disconnected the AMS execs were.
Yeah, so I think with the AMS executives, I mean, one of the first things that we need to understand is that a lot of those resignations were personally motivated. It's not always an issue about executive cohesion, and I recognize the fact that the executives are role models for council, and it's very important that we are setting a positive image for councillors. But it's also about councillors having the tools themselves to say, you know what, I disagree with the executive, I'm going to set my own direction as well.
Got it. Okay, we're going to move on to administration. So the AMS has increased spending on administration substantially, especially since around 2008, 2009 sort of budget. Would you say that this increase was justified, especially given that over that time the business revenue has decreased by a substantial amount? And would you do anything about this increase during your term?
So one of the things that the AMS does really well, in my opinion, is running the businesses. Businesses for the AMS, the revenue that we get from businesses actually helps us keep student fees really low. I think we have the lowest student fees in Canada, and that's one of the benefits of having these businesses there. Unfortunately, the revenue from businesses has been going down, and due to the current deficit, I think because of the current deficit, we need to reconsider how we're spending our money. If budget cuts need to be made, they have to be made. Hopefully the referendum question will pass for the fee restructure so that we're not in the same state that the current exec are in. But I think should there be hard decisions that need to be made within cutting funding for administrative costs, those cuts need to be made.
Yeah, so I think administratively, one of the first things that we look at is staff. We do have a lot of staff, and it's partially because we have very antiquated systems in some ways. When you look at our financial system, if you're a student, if you want to get a reimbursement, you have to come to us, file paperwork for either a check or a cash disbursement. And it's a lot of paper, it's a lot of time, it's processing, record keeping. We need to make that entire system online so then we can potentially look at where we can create efficiencies that way. I think in terms of the business revenue, to address your point, we shouldn't be reliant on business revenues. We don't want to have a variable budget where one year we have $100,000 that's coming into the executive wing and basing our budget off that, and then another year where there's $1 million. We should be putting business revenues in the AMS endowment, which has a stable return, which we can rely on, and then look to create efficiencies within the society so we don't have to be spending so much on administrative costs.
Great. We'll have time for a 30-second rebuttal. Do you want a rebuttal? No? Okay. Do we want an open discussion on this question? Okay, candidates. Okay, next up, we are going to talk about the PAI bonus. This is a $5,000 bonus that executive receive if they meet certain goals set out at the beginning of their term. Would you be in favor of eliminating the bonus, given the structures that the AMS is facing financially? And if you were to keep it, how would you make sure that those goals are not only realistic, but are also goals that are not just achieved, in your first 3 months of office, and whomever sets them gets that money?
So a year ago, I was sitting on Oversight Committee, and basically Oversight Committee is appointed to oversee PAI disbursements and actually track if the execs are actually executing their plans. In my opinion, I think for a very, very successful exec to actually implement everything that they promise to do, you need to have a timeline, you need to have metrics of success, everything needs to be laid out very, very clearly. And if you're not meeting if you're not meeting the deadlines within your timeline, you need to go back to Oversight and say, hey, there's been some challenges, I need to readjust the timeline, there's some things that I want to change, and that's how you make sure that, that you're actually going to meet your goal. In terms of being in favor of cutting PAI, if council says that we need to cut off PAI, I will, but I don't think that should actually be, that should be a question.
Yeah, so as I said in my answer to the Ubyssey, I do not agree with pay, and not just for financial reasons, it's also for accountability reasons. Right now, Oversight Committee, when they adjudicate executive pay, it's a very arbitrary process. They look at our goals, they say, well, you kind of tried this, so we're going to award you this percentage. It's not as clearly, metrically laid out as it should be. I think we should eliminate it, but I also believe that if you are running for a type of this position, you should be self-motivated enough to complete your own goals, to have projects that you're going to work on, and ultimately we need to make sure that the goals that we are making as executives, pay or not, are open and transparent to students. That means publishing what our goals are openly and allowing students to see what the adjudication of those results are. I also think that we need a well-trained oversight committee with the assistance of the AMS's Human Resources Department to actually meaningfully evaluate the executive performance.
I think in terms of keeping ourselves accountable, we're all accountable to students. We're voted in by students, and if we're not meeting our goals, if I personally am not meeting my goals as president, I encourage the Ubyssey or students to call me out. We have oversight committee for a reason. They evaluate where you've reached with your goal, if you're actually going to achieve your goal. Personally, sitting on oversight, I think it's it's a very good committee, and it keeps track of what the execs are doing, and it's actually a very good way of incentivizing execs to actually carry out their goals.
So without oversight, like let's not include and pretend for a second we're going to keep oversight committee. Would you be in favor of getting rid of the money attached to that, which seems to be the part that execs have griped about and students have griped about?
If students want it gone, it'll be gone. I'll support it.
Okay. Do you want your rebuttal? Okay. Do we want to open the floor here, or we can have a debate, or? Do you want to talk more? No? Okay. We might actually get through all our questions tonight, which has always been a shot in the dark. So right now, the university is undergoing a review of its sports. It's called the Sports Targeting Review. At this point, they have announced that 16 of their 29 varsity teams will remain as varsity, and they will be reviewing the remaining teams in the next month under the current executive. However, the structure for competitive clubs has not come through yet and is not public, and the AMS has several clubs that would be considered competitive and would probably be considered under this model. What would you do to support AMS clubs to meet UBC's requirements for competitive clubs? Would you support them forward, or would you want to maintain the control that the AMS has had over these sports competitive clubs and a certain percentage of student athletic fees?
So I think everyone here can agree that sports is a huge part of student culture on campus. It's actually something I was very excited of in first year. I remember going to a UBC versus SFU football game, and that was the best football game I've ever seen because we had such a big turnout. But as president, if I get elected, this will be something that I will be inheriting. So all I can do as president is actually push student agenda. We need to make sure that these departments, sports departments, are not left out. Like there needs to be some sort of support from the AMS. From my understanding, there is a competitive athletics fund that was created, and through that fund, what we could do is push for getting a bigger piece of pie from the $1 million we give to UBC for athletics.
So first off, I think with the sport targeting review, the biggest concern that I have is it seems to be a rushed process. UBC was very adamant about the fact that they did speed it up, and the classifications came out way earlier. And I am very concerned about the fact that we haven't actually seen what criteria there are for competitive clubs yet. In terms of what support we provide to those clubs, I mean, first off, if they are still part of the AMS, we'll provide them the same support that we do to every other club. There is a question about their assets. Like we have some clubs that have equipment, like the weightlifting team. So we're going to have to talk with the university about who has jurisdiction over that equipment. In terms of the athletic fee, though, UBC students contribute $1 million to UBC athletics every year, and it's actually been a great bargaining chip for the AMS when we're talking about university issues, because we are basically subsidizing sports. If we have a high degree of competitive clubs that are coming back to the AMS, I am going to advocate for a portion of that money to be removed from athletics and put towards a collective pool for those clubs to utilize. But we would be doing it very much in the way that we budget all of our clubs.
Gotcha. You have a rebuttal there, Harsev? Yeah, we can just.
So in terms of looking at funding, we can always look at ways of fundraising for these clubs. Athletics is something that we can easily go out there and look for sponsors and look for fundraising initiatives that can actually raise a lot of money. And I think that could be another avenue for the AMS to look into in terms of trying to support these clubs. We don't necessarily just have to narrow ourselves down to just one option. At the end of the day, we are the student society, and we need to be there to support them throughout the whole process.
Gotcha.
I think just broader, we also need to talk about how we support our student athletes. And there are significant effects that having a club moved into the competitive sport model will have to the actual athletes themselves. Now, Ubyssey's guarantee that their scholarships will be retained, but there's a serious impact on students actually being able to take part of these sports later on. So I think we need to look academically at what support we're providing them, financially making sure that their scholarships are in fact actually retained, and there is financial support should they have to extend their degree. But we just need to be looking at the whole picture.
Do we want to move into a 2-minute discussion here? No. Okay, cool. So Ubyssey's executive structure isn't the most popular among Canadian universities, and among counselors and at the AMS, there has been some discussion of restructuring how the AMS, basically which stuff is run by which executive. So my question is, would you want to change it? Would you push for that in your year? And if you do want to change it, how would you? Sorry. So we're just going to repeat the question. So the Ubyssey executive structure, the AMS executive structure has sort of fallen out of favor among Canadian universities. Would you change it? And if so, how? And in which way, not the actual process.
One of the things that I feel should be added on to the exec structure is somebody who would actually be solely responsible for student life on campus. I know there's been talks over the past few years about adding a new portfolio called VP Student Life, and that's definitely something that I want to look into. The reason why I say this is because we have VP administration look at sort of having the new sub, we have student life as well. So it's a lot of responsibilities under one portfolio, and I think it's better if you create one portfolio that would just be dedicated towards fostering better student experience on campus.
Yeah, so part of my portfolio is VP Externals, talking with other student unions, and I've talked a lot about different structures with them. We're one of the only student societies that has a VP Administration and a VP Finance. And if you look at the VP Administration docket, I mean, they have the Whistler Lodge, they have the clubs, and they also have the new sub-project, which is going to be coming to a close in, hopefully, 2015. So I think we need to transition that portfolio into a VP Student Life that has the sustainability files for the AMS, that has clubs, that has our art gallery, but also has some of the elements from the VP Academic, like mental health and well-being, and so on and so forth. I also think that we need to be restructuring how our clubs are actually served, and I want to merge a new portfolio called the VP Finance and Operations, which purely controls the clubs and the society's budget. So just to elaborate a bit on the VP Finance and Operations, one of the largest challenges for clubs is if you want to talk about your club budget, you need to go talk to FinCom. If you want to get support for your club, you have to go talk to SAC. Naturally, they work very closely together, but we need to streamline that process, make it as efficient as possible, so the user experience is beneficial. But I also think we need to be taking a look at how our council is structured. Our committee structure isn't open anymore. Students can't just get regularly involved. And in fact, the people that are being involved as part of the Student Life portfolio are people who've been with the AMS for a long time. So I think we need to make that more open.
You don't have to take it. You don't have to take the time if you don't want to. You don't have anything to add, then don't.
The reason why I think adding a new VP Student Life portfolio is I think we both agree that there's greater need to foster more student culture on campus. One of the things that I feel the VP Admin portfolio hasn't done really well over the past 1 year is reaching out to clubs, reaching out to undergraduate societies, reaching out to students as well, and trying to get them to get involved with the AMS, try and partner with us, try and start new initiatives as well. So I think just having a portfolio on its own would be ideal.
Do you want a discussion? Yeah. 2 minutes of discussion.
So when we're talking about how clubs are governed, right now they're under the Student Administrative Commission, SAC, and the SAC is underneath the VP Admin, but they have, to be honest, they don't have many resources right now. You've got 3 people who are working in that office that are responsible for over 360 clubs. We have antiquated technology. We're still using Excel spreadsheet to actually classify all of our clubs, and that spreadsheet breaks down quite a lot. So first off, we need to modernize that office to be more efficient. We need to look at what resources clubs actually need, what resources SAC needs to be effective. We should be talking about more professional opportunities that we can push through SAC for clubs. We should reintroduce the mixers. And actually, one of the conferences that we held this year, it's called the Student Union Development Summit. I want to port over that model for all clubs, just to talk about club administration, club best practices, and bringing people together to have more discussion and collaboration. We don't want our clubs to work in silos. We want them to work together.
Just a question. I know you've said this a couple of times. You said that you want to start a student assembly structure. How exactly do you plan on trying to engage each and every club on a student assembly?
Yeah, so a student assembly, again, is not a supplement to regular engagement. What the student assembly does is provide groups that don't have a lot of stake within the AMS's decisional structure that power. So it's not a replacement for being able to go and have those one-on-one conversations. In fact, what I've been talking about with a lot of groups through this campaign is creating long-term relationships. We should be having organizational relationships that exist past executives. So I think the student assembly is a great way to have that dialogue start, but it's going to be up to the executives and up to council as well to continue those relationships forward.
So one of the around the Ubyssey, we say half the battle is showing up, and certainly for the AMS president, you are assigned a lot of meetings, a lot of variety, and sometimes it comes down to choice. How would you manage that, and how do you think your track record speaks to that?
So first, if elected, one of the first things I would do is ask the university, please list all the university committees that have student representation, and then likewise within the AMS, look at all of the committees that have presidential representation, which is pretty much all of them. Then I would want to go through and see which ones actually would fit under relevant vice president portfolios and which ones should be prioritized just for the president. In terms of time management, it all comes down to having a good assistant with you who can help organize your schedule, be someone to bounce ideas off, and someone who can also keep you accountable. I forgot the other half of the question.
How would you manage your time?
Oh, yeah.
And how does your track record speak to that?
As VP External, I keep busy. I travel off campus quite a lot to meet with other student unions. I would just continue having a good assistant who helps me organize my schedule, but also manage my own time well through pre-thinking.
So in terms of managing your time, I think I have almost every term I have about 3 positions I hold on campus, and almost always have about 4 to 5 courses that I'm taking. So what's key for me is usually having a very structured timetable, and I always make sure that I get to know the timetable for whichever organization I'm working for way in advance, and look at prioritizing the events or meetings that I actually need to be at. By doing so, you're actually maintaining relations because you're actually showing up. You know the issues. You're in touch with the society. You're also representing student society's opinion. So, in my opinion, the best way to do your time management is actually to just have a very, very well organized personal timetable.
30 seconds.
So there's actually a great piece of advice that I got from a gentleman named Lev Buchman, who's a student union executive at McGill. He always says, take one day off when you're a student executive, one day off for yourself. because it brings up a big point about longevity. When you're the AMS president, especially for a term that's 15 months, you're going to be having dozens and dozens of meetings every single week, and that's going to be continuing on forward. You need to be able to have that period to rest, to re-energize, and be able to sit on all those committees with the energy that students deserve.
As president, you're faced with leading a diverse executive team that does not always get along. What would you do to keep the team together and focused on improving life for students?
So I had this issue with AUS when I was the president of the Arts Undergrad Society, and some of the execs were not happy with the way I was handling things. And so, like I said earlier, I went to student development and I sought some advice, and they gave me some really helpful advice. And basically, it's just the simplest thing to do is to listen to your execs. What I did was I sat down with them, talked to them, and I said, look. We've had our differences in the past. We're not getting along right now. We need to work towards, working as a cohesive team. I want to work with you. You want to work with me. Let's work together and make sure that we're achieving our goals on time. At the end of the day, we're both working here for the same goal. We're serving students, and we're all trying to make our community a better place. So let's work together and have better results come out because we're going to have a cohesive team.
So I had this issue as VP External. Sometimes when you're working with a group that isn't elected together, again, you'll have personalities that do clash. I think part of it starts with that personal relationship. You need to get to know your executives, and this is something that didn't really happen this year. We didn't know each other. We only worked together. And I think you really need those close personal bonds to develop that mutual respect that you need to work in these tough positions. I think in terms of later down the road, a lot of it is just that mutual respect, willing to say to the person, you know what, I'm going to disagree with you on this issue, but I'm still going to allow you to voice your opinion. I don't think of this as a personal issue, and be able to move forward. We can't let personal issues fester either, and that has happened this year. We need to be able to deal with issues directly as they come up instead of allowing them to fester in back doors, and as president, that's what I intend to do.
30 seconds for rebuttal.
So one of the issues that, again, these two execs had with was the fact that four of the other execs got along with me very well and were very good friends of mine. And so the other two execs thought that, we were voting as a voting bloc. That was one of the issues that arose, and it was an issue that came up each and every time. I'm just wondering, should you and Anne get elected, how are you going to manage the team dynamics in terms of voting in execcom?
So I think it's no secret. I really don't want to bring this into this election, but yeah, and Kessler and I have dated. We've worked together for a number of months on AMS Council and also on the AMS Executive, and these are concerns that we addressed with our Human Resources Department. We addressed them with the Executive Committee. We made it very clear we are not voting as a bloc. We're going to disagree on the issues that we're going to disagree on, and it's just allowing yourself to allow other executives to call you out when it looks like that. But we've been very, very careful. Yeah, I would like to bring up, dating amongst the executive, it is something that happens. I've never actually seen it brought up in an election debate because it really shouldn't be an issue. As long as you have those clear boundaries set, as long as there is communication from other executives, if there's appearance that it does look like you're slating, and as long as you address those issues, it's not an issue. But we need to be very, very clear about that, and I really don't think it should be brought up here.
First of all, my apologies for bringing it up. The only reason I ask is because I had the same problem within my exec team, and I had really good friends on the exec team, and other execs had concern that we were voting as a voting bloc. So I was just trying to relate that to your case. Should both of you get elected, that would be a concern, and that could affect the way execcom works. And you could be considered a voting bloc should you get elected.
We've actually worked for 3 months, even up to a year. She was LPC chair. And we have actually had no issues. I mean, you can talk to any member of the executive, and they'll reiterate that. But again, this seems to be a bit of a political dig that I don't think should be coming up in a debate.
So leading into from teams to what your team should be, which candidates from the other races would you want to have on your team the most?
Can't answer that question. It's slating.
If they changed the rules from 2 years ago? Oh, okay. Well, sorry about that. They've changed the rules from 2 years ago, and I was away for the elections meeting. Apparently, they said you can endorse candidates, but verbally, but you couldn't slate. Oh, excellent. Well, thank you guys for showing up to our debate. We're going to skip the last question. Thank you very much for coming today, and we wish you the best of luck for the next 2 days.